the armies that you've got? Do you love all the armies that you've got, and are you happy with those?
That's a good question, because I've got call me out here, Dan.
Well, I will come on to that. I can't really point fingers anymore, can I?
No, that's strictly true.
And there's an awful lot of tools in the Eldar toolbox there.
Now it seems you play Drakari? Dark Eldar?
Yes, so technically they are Eldar, but
it seems like a bit jealous.
We are, well, very much so, yeah.
They've got everything I want.
Yeah. I mean, we played the same guy in the Northeast Open last year with the Grey Knights player, Daniel, didn't we?
Yes,
and he reminded me 2 or 3 times and then did it anyway.
He was very polite, very nice. I think it was like at the start of the game, turn 1, turn 2 reminded me, and turn 3 you'd done it, and I was like, you can't do that. I was like, how dare you?
He's just stolen my home objective.
Yeah. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast. We're your hosts, Jack
and Dan.
Today we're going to be talking about armies we hate and armies we love.
Yeah, and armies we love to hate.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. It's looking at some of those factions that we struggle against and why. Yeah. And then some of those that we absolutely love playing against. Not because we can steamroll them, but sometimes just because it's a good game.
It can be a really good game, and sometimes you do get those. On the flip side, you just get those games where you're like, I wish I stayed at home. I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't spend my 3 hours coming here.
I'm not having a lot of fun here, Lewis.
Well, you get that on a t-shirt or like a battle mat or something.
Yeah.
That's an inside joke. That
sorry,
most of our audience wouldn't have got.
No, I'm renowned for complaining if a game isn't fun, but it's not fun because I'm getting my ass kicked. Yes. So let's dive in. So I mean, before we do that, I suppose we always forget to do this, but please, again, it's really helping the channel. Like, share. Keep sharing, subscribe, keep commenting. We'd love to know your thoughts on this. So let us know in the comments what factions you find hard work, which ones you love playing against, etc.
Probably worth mentioning as well that you had a actually really lovely story that you mentioned before, right? Before the podcast. So you met a fan.
I was at my local club on Friday, and a guy come up to us and he's like, "Oh, you Dan from the podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm Colin from Colin's Painting Adventure." I'll put a link to his Instagram in the description. And we've been talking on Instagram for months now. And he was like, "Oh, I really appreciate you guys signposting me to the club." So he didn't know about the club, and he'd found this club, and he was basically saying that it's without going into his personal details, but it's made a massive difference to his quality of life. Yeah, it's and we sometimes forget, like, it can be, particularly if you're trying to get back into the hobby, it can be difficult to take those first steps to go meet new people, isn't it?
It's a big step, isn't it? And it's just, even like doing the podcast, I don't even like consider that sort of stuff. I don't like think about like, what am I even making a difference? I'm just doing this because I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even think about like the wider.
It was a wonderful, it was a wonderful,
really nice
benefit that somebody that we'd been able to signpost him to the club, and then he's really enjoying being back in the hobby. Yeah. So Colin, thank you, and hopefully we will roll dice with you soon. But looking forward to spending some more time with him. He's a lovely bloke. Good. Maybe he's not one of the ones that we hate to play. I should say it depends what faction he plays. Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you better be good.
If you're on this list, then you're not playing.
Yeah, sorry.
But let's start with one of yours, which we'll start with some that we struggle against, and I think you nailed it on the first one. And I think this is a story that will be common to a lot of viewers.
Yes, it will, unfortunately. So 1,000 Suns.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. Well, I know what it's about them, but they've changed recently in the new day slate, so we might see them dropping off my love to hate list, maybe.
But I personally, sorry to interrupt there, but personally I think they did get a few nerfs, but I think they're still strong.
They are still strong.
But yeah, crack on.
No. There's plenty to talk about with these guys, but yeah. So for me, it's obviously I play Necrons primarily, so it's the psychic attacks that they kind of get through that gives dishes out like the mortal wounds. I don't have very many saves against mortal wounds. No. Obviously, the Necrons have the spider, which we've talked about briefly in one of our videos, but the spider gives the 5 up field no pain.
It gives units nearby a 5 up field no pain against mortals. So I suppose if your local meta's 1,000 Suns heavy, maybe it's chuck a couple of spiders in there.
Just kind of.
All they're going to do is target them first.
Yeah, exactly. They're not like they've got like they're quite a big quite a big unit, so they've got lots of wounds, but they're not that tough. I think
that
toughness like 6 something like
and,
that.
And the raw damage output of Thousand Suns is still pretty strong.
It's still really good. Still really good.
Magnus has been doing a lot wrong.
Magnus, oh my goodness, he has like a 16-inch movement or something like that, and he can then like do an ability where he moves again.
And still charge.
Is
that right? I don't know, but I mean the double move is bad enough.
I guess most of my pain points are going to be the ones from prior to the data slate changes, only because we've not very played.
Well, if you've got 16 move and you can double move and still shoot because he chucks out a lot of damage from his psychic attacks and shooting.
He's so tough.
32 inches, you can get an eyeballs on anything, and with that kind of movement.
Yeah.
So that's. What about? I've jumped ahead a point here, but Doombolt. Doombolt. We all love to hate Doombolt.
It is my kryptonite.
Yeah.
Honestly, whenever I play as someone who has Magnus with Doombolt, they always manage to roll the 6. It's always D6 wounds. It's like 6 plus 3. It's like, no. It's like, stop it. Always gets it through, and they're just always some. Because again, most of my Necrons are only like 1 wound, 2 wounds, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they just manage to do massive damage. And Doombolt is, they've still got the pistol, they've still got the charge phase, and it's horrible. It's horrible.
They have the capabilities to, with Necrons, our resilience is our strong point.
Yeah.
So typically, your opponent has to focus a large amount or all of his army on something to get rid of it, or we're going to just keep coming back.
Exactly.
But 1,000 Suns seem to have the ability to pick 2 or 3 things and go, "You're dead. You're dead. You're dead."
It's horrible.
And you're just like, okay.
I'm just like, I remember just someone point and be like, I'm going to Doombolt. I'll pick them up.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry, I'll pick them up.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking about the toughness kind of thing, that is something that we pride ourselves on when it comes to toughness. But this has changed now, but they used to be able to remove your armor save.
So this was also an invuln. So this was like a Catan killer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they could point at your Catan and say you don't have a save.
No
this turn.
saves can be allowed or any kind. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So they basically, I remember my monolith that only has like a 2-up save, has no invuln, but they're like, all right, that guy has no save. It's like, what? And it's just all the damage, and they had like the Gatling cannon and such like that.
But the rolling enough dice, you can take it out.
Oh, easily. There's obviously a lot of small fire.
Well, that's the thing, because a small fire with low AP doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. It's just about getting the wounds through, isn't it?
Exactly. Speaking of flamers, sorry, I'm interrupting you again there.
Sorry, go on.
But flamers are just nasty in Overwatch. They can pack so many flavors of like blobs of 10.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. And they can teleport as well. So just just teleport behind you, and they're like, haha. And I'm like, no, please don't. Because like it's like a stalemate where they get my backline, and they're like, right, flamer. And I'm like, right, well, I can't move, because if I move, they're going to flamer us. I can't charge, because if I charge, they're going to flamer us. So I'm like, all right, I'll shoot, and I've not got very many shooting things. So
it's very. We talk about this a lot in the Necrons tactics videos I do with unit reviews. But forcing your opponent to make hard choices is a really powerful ability in this game. And 1,000 Suns innately force you, in the hands of a good player particularly, they'll force you to make hard choices. I think that armor save one, they've recently changed that in the data slate. It's still -2 to your save.
Yes.
And I don't know if that applies to invulns or not, if it's just your standard armor save.
Just standard armor save.
So that's good. So it's still reasonably good.
Yeah.
So it would put, for example, a monolith or a land raider on saving on 4s.
Yep.
But it's not going to have the same impact on a Catan, because you're still going to get your 4-up invuln.
Exactly. So some slight good news for me.
But it's still good.
Now, probably worth saying that we don't hate versing these armies. It's just the armies that we struck with, basically. I think we're going to talk about the ones we hit later.
I think they've been... I think they've been a little bit of a stat check for a lot of armies, 1,000 Suns, because unless you've got the right tools in the toolkit to deal with them, then they will roll over you.
Because like whenever I build my list, I never build my list to like purposely fight against like that specific army. So if I was versing 1,000 Suns, I know I spoke about the spiders before. I don't feel comfortable adding in the spiders just because I'm versing.
There's not enough other factions where you're going to get that benefit.
Exactly. So I like to build my lists that are just generic across the board. That does mess me up a lot of times because I go there and I get loads of mortal wounds, and I'm like, maybe I should have.
And they have been because they've been so strong. You have been seeing more of them in the meta, I suppose. I haven't been to any events for a while because of
busyness.
Yeah, business basically. But going to the Northeast Open at the end of this month, it'd be interesting to see whether we see as many 1,000 Suns players there as we have been.
I'm interested overall, because obviously with the new changes, I'm wondering what's hot, what's not.
It's really exciting time for the Go-To tournament.
It is.
But
that's my first one, I guess.
Okay.
One I struggled. What about you, Dan?
Anyone who is a long-term viewer of this will be shocked to know that it's Eldar.
What, Dan? No, don't say that.
And
why ever?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of army rules that take the element of chance out of a dice game.
Sure.
And fate dice do that. So you can go, right, well, that's an auto hit, or this, I'm changing this to a 6. They've also got built-in re-rolls.
Yes.
So they get 1 re-roll to hit and 1 re-roll to wound per unit.
So they can basically roll and then be like, oh, I'm going to use my free re-roll, and then instead of re-rolling,
and then just pick a fate dice. Yeah. They've got psychers who can change fate dice to a 6. So you roll your fate dice at the beginning of the battle.
But is it?
Yeah.
Oh, does it not happen every time?
I don't think so. And then you have the ability to generate more of them and the ability to change some of them. So if you roll a bunch of 2s, you've got the ability with some units to change them to 6s.
Sure.
And 6s are really important because if you have a unit that's got dev wounds, for example, or whatever, you can guarantee that damage.
Oh, yeah.
So what we were seeing right at the beginning of the edition was there was a great big their version of knights, which are Wraith Knights, I think they're called. Excuse me if I've got that wrong, but they huge, great big gun. So you could proc them to do
the max damage.
Which is really really insane. So there's a few reasons why I don't like them, but also they seem to have an answer to everything, which I like as much as like you just raised a brilliant example with Necrons. Is Necrons are quite they've been strong in the meta, we're quite good against certain factions, but our Achilles heel is psychic damage and mortal wounds.
It always has been.
Every army should have an Achilles heel.
Yeah,
and I feel a little bit like certainly it might have changed. It's changed now with the balanced data slates, but for a long time in this edition, Eldar had an answer to almost everything.
It's true.
They had speed in terms of bikes and warp spiders. Warp spiders, you can bounce them around the board. Damage output was really strong.
Yeah.
They've got resilient units like Wraithguard and the Avatar of Cain, who halves all incoming damage. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that, halving all incoming damage?
How dare they?
I know.
We Necron players would never do that.
And the absolute queen of bullshit is the Incarn. They've changed this rule as well, because at the beginning of the edition, when the Eldar player killed one of your units or one of your units died for whatever reason, the Incarn could immediately teleport to where that unit was.
Right.
And as long as she wasn't within engagement range of any of your other units, that was fine. There's no 9-inch rule or 3-inch rule here. It was just they could just move as long as you weren't in engagement.
And what did that unit do? Do you know?
The Incarn is an absolute blender in combat.
Oh, really?
So they would shoot something in your back line and teleport the Incarn there. And then she would charge something else in your back line and kill it. Oh. And then later in
right.
But then later in the fate, if they did that first, if they then charged another unit and killed that, then she could teleport back to where that unit was. You can't do that now. You can only do the teleport once but it was incredibly strong.
Jeez, that's right. So just basically just the flexibility of just getting around the board so fast, opposed to having to move up or deep strike or whatever.
You can't screen against it, because as long as she wasn't in engagement range, she can just drop in.
There's no
there's no minimum. No, there's no 9-inch, no 3-inch, and it's just not in engagement range.
Terrifying.
Very, very, very strong.
That's awful.
So you can see how you could build your list. I mean, they points nerfed her is basically what they did. Is made her very expensive, but you can see already there that there are a lot of tools, and like you talked about, they've got psychic damage.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of good shooting damage. Indirect, they had very strong indirect, which has obviously just been slightly nerfed as well.
Sure.
There's an awful lot of tools in the Eldar toolbox there.
Now it seems you play Drukhari? Eldar?
Yes, so technically they are Eldar, but
it seems like a bit jealous.
We are, well, very much so, yeah.
They've got everything I want.
Yeah, I mean, we've massively improved since the start of the edition.
Why just play Eldar, but you're playing a Drukhari and say, I'm playing Eldar rules.
Yeah, there's a weird hybrid, which is even more bullshit sub-faction called Inari, which are like Eldar who will ally with Dark Eldar.
Oh, okay.
So they have been taking our as a Drukhari player, this makes things even worse for us, because they take our best units in their Inari lists.
Right.
And the Inari have been so strong that the best units in our faction keep getting nerfed because Inari players are using them. Right. I'm like, we'll just stop, but So
stop. Give everyone else a chance.
Yeah.
Let us play.
So you can mix and match it. I'm just a purist. So I like Drukhari. Wow. I'm not going to, but also, I mean, it's quite complicated if you're trying to mix two factions. But also that gives you the ability to cherry pick the best units from Eldar and Drukhari, which seems a bit much.
Yeah, true.
So yeah,
that's fair.
I think they're very strong. They
there's not like one thing that can take them up.
And they haven't. they've been nerfed so much now that they're kind of mid-board again, which is
well, they've been at the top for so long.
They were at the top for quite a long time.
So it's good.
So they're nowhere near as bad as they were, but for a long time they were the bane of my life. Yeah.
I like it.
What about you? Have you got any more you love to hate?
One more that I really struggle against, and it's the Orks. Like, I don't know what it is. Just actually, sorry. Again, I know what it is. I've got it written down. But no, like their wars got so good now. Like you can war 2 turns. You pick what turns you want. You get like in-run saves, feel no pain saves on some of the other ones, and just with their war, they can just move
the speed. Run. Yeah, you can advance and charge. Is what makes a difference, isn't it?
It's just crazy because most of my Necron lists that I run aren't melee focused. So as soon as they get rid of my primary melee ones, I can't get up the board.
Yeah.
As soon as they take out those ones, my shooting ones, I don't feel comfortable getting them on the mid board. So. And the Orks love being there. They love being there and then moving forward into your own zone. So then with whenever I'm playing versus an Ork player and they war turn 1, I'm just like, oh, here we go. I'm buggered.
It's a real challenge. I think there's a couple of other like Blood Angels and Space Wolves are fast moving, full on melee kind of.
I think that's probably just fast moving.
Yeah, fast moving melee is difficult to deal with. And I would agree with that.
Yeah, although World Eaters, they're not. They didn't feel fast when I played them. When I played them last few times, they've been maybe the opponents I've played against didn't have the right units or.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I've had a little bit I've definitely had more success against World Eaters than I have against Space Wolves and Orks. Let's put it that way. Yeah. But I fully agree. I think there are. They've got their trucks, as you mentioned here, are quite good value points wise. So
it's like 70 points for a truck.
It feels like you can put quite a lot on the board, can't you?
Well, the trucks themselves, I just love how they can just jam pack like 20.
20. Chuck a lot of boys in there.
Boys in there, and they just like run the truck up, and then because the thing about the truck is that it's so cheap, but it's so tough that a lot of my units can't take out the trucks. And for being 70 points, the trucks move the guys up, the boys all get out, they all run up, and the truck comes back and holds objectives.
Yeah,
and it's so
does
tough.
Some actions or whatever.
I can't take it out. So the trucks are just so strong.
Yeah, it's a good. It is decent. I think the one thing I can do with Eldar, Dark Eldar, which I should do a bit more, is move block them because I've got some fast stuff.
Yep.
So obviously the trucks can't go through terrain. So if I can sacrifice some vehicles or units to move block them by blocking those alleyways, then that will slow them down a little bit. But it still hurts. I think Mega Knobs was the Bully Boys attachment with Mega Knobs getting a double war, so there's 2 turns of war, and during the war they got a 4-up feel no pain.
Yeah.
And they've nerfed that to a 5-up now, which feels a bit better, but they've also given them a massive points hike, haven't they?
Well,
I think we're probably less likely to see that as many of Mega Knobs as we were, but just loads of boys in trucks, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And I'm going to be even more scared now because obviously the new rules are talking about battle line. So battle line units now will be more dominant in the latest edition.
Yes.
So more boys on the field, I'm not looking forward to, basically. I was going to say something else as well about the these 2 armies that I've picked, the Thousands and Orks. My friends will probably be like, well, why have you picked those 2 units for? Because those 2 armies, because those are the ones I typically play the most.
Right.
Because obviously in our friend group we have a couple of Thousands players and a couple of Orks players.
Yes.
But I've played them so many times, people would expect, oh well, you played them so many times, you get used to playing them. It's still they're just still so tough. Like my army's can't not build against it, but I just find them so tough, and I think the opponents I'm playing against are getting better and better. I'm finding them more and more difficult. So maybe it's the opponents I'm playing against that are really making them worthwhile playing, or is the army just too good for me?
I think they were absolutely strong when the Codex came out, and they've had around the nerves to try and prevent them running away with the meta.
Yeah,
and that it's early days yet. I think is what would say. I actually will come on to this a little bit later, but I quite enjoy playing against them. I found it tough with the Bully Boys with the 4-up feel no pain, but I think there's just something quite thematic about the way about a bit like this huge kind of horde charge of the Orks.
I'm gonna be terrified. I'm not gonna have enough shooting.
But we'll come back to why I like playing against them. But let's stay on the negative train for now. There's This one was a game I had actually that reminded me about this. Was a game I played on Friday at the Wildings at my local club, and I played a lovely guy called Rob, but he brought Dark Angels, but played them in the Space Marines Vanguard detachment.
All right.
And the reason for this is the main army rule for that is that if you are outside of 12 inches of that unit, then when you're shooting it, it gets -1 to hit and benefits of cover.
Oh, so pretty hard to hit.
It is so you can if you take a load of vehicles backline tanks in that, somebody's got to get right up close to shoot them, at which point the Dark Angels just crump them basically. It's they're not doing amazing in the meta, but from a personal perspective, it's a different challenge to solve.
Yeah,
because I haven't faced that a great deal.
Yeah.
So while I love to hate it, the hate part is it's difficult, but the love bit is like a new challenge. I'm like, oh, I need to really think about this.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, it's like, again, you don't want to so much change your list primarily to fight this army.
No.
It's so much like, okay, well, what can I do with the army I've got to combat this? I mean, I think that's one of the things that do love about Warhammer, where it's like you go to a tournament and you play so many different armies. And I remember going to one tournament where I played 2 Necron players, but both of them played 2 different detachments with 2 different complete armies, and it's like lists even. It's like versing them was like, oh, this is great because he's playing such a different list to this one, although it's the same army. It's like, this is great. Like, how am I going to verse against them? So I do like that aspect of it.
I do love it. I think so too. So I think it's the -1 to hit and benefit of cover rule for 12 inches there is an interesting one because it hasn't been nerfed. So as Necron players,
we have changed, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a strat where which
temporal
used to counter-temporal shift. Yeah, so if you outside of 12, we would get those benefits.
Yes,
but all of those stratagems have been changed in the data slate to be 18 inches. So I think that makes Vanguard slightly stronger as well because it still kept the 12.
Nice.
That's good. But it's a challenge for Necrons. For Dark Eldar, it's pretty tough because they're putting on my Scourge units, which are the shoot and scoot unit with the Dart Lancers. It's putting them to hit on 5s instead of 4s. Which even with rerolls is it's difficult. They can be a challenge, and I'm looking forward to playing some more games against them to see if I can work out how to. I actually won the game, but it was close, like really close.
It looked really close, yeah, it was really good. I think that's it. I think just playing against those armies more and more and more, you will get more used to either losing or get used to versing against them.
Sometimes you just have to take your lumps and lose a couple while you're learning how the army functions, and the cogs start to
it's like, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. I think it's the stratagems as well. I can't remember what armies do in their stratagems.
They have streamlined the game so much, and there's common stratagems across armies now. So you're like we were talking about there, is like, oh, you've got that strat that if I'm not within 18, it's -1 to hit you and you get cover, or you've got that strat so you can do a reactive move 6 inches away, that kind of thing.
It's hard though as well because obviously each detachment has its own stratagems. Yeah. So what, like on average, you still get 5 detachments per army.
At 30 to 40 odd detachments, stratagems per army.
And then how many armies we've got?
So nearly 30 factions.
Exactly. So that becomes a lot of rules to try and remember.
Yes, and that's why I'm not. At the beginning of this edition, people will complain a little bit that it was reducing flavour by giving some units or stratagems the same ability, are the same across different armies.
Now, in the index, yes, that makes sense because it was just an index at that point. But as we're getting the more codexes, we're starting to see that flavour come out.
And you don't want, but equally from my perspective, that commonality is good. So like, I don't need to learn 900 stratagems because first of all, there'll be 1 or 2 detachments in the codex that are good, so you're down to a dozen.
Yeah.
And secondly, some of that dozen will be ones I've encountered in other factions because they're the same.
Yeah.
So it just makes picking up what your opponent can do a bit quicker, I think.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
I'm a fan of that. And as usual, I've digressed there, but let's instead in terms of units then rather than factions, there are some units that also can pose a lot of problems, can't they?
There absolutely is. For me, it's indirect fire units. I just don't have a lot to deal with it. The only thing that I have to deal with them is the dropping in using the cosmic precision stratagem.
So Hypercrypt gives you the ability to get if you can get in the back lines, because that's usually where the indirect is, isn't it?
That's it. And then when the indirect units typically are zoning, so you're not going to be getting in within 9, so you've got to use that cosmic precision for 1 CP. And for the amount of zoning they've done, typically only the Catan can get there. But I don't really use that. And
they you can't use that with cosmic precision anymore, can you?
Oh, well, exactly. Yeah. So true. That's also changed as well. So I'm just really struggling because indirect fire, they just from a distance, they're just popping you, hiding away. And I remember a couple of games I've had where I've literally just had my Catan I've just random just
gone, yeah.
beeline it straight to the indirect fire because I know for a fact my Catan will survive all the other shooting that's coming in. But I know I need to get to that unit. Because
but it's like your Catan is like what have they got 6 or 7 inch move? Some of them.
Yeah, well, barely that. It's like 5 or something like that. It's like 6.
It's going to take you 3 turns to get there.
Got to run them and stuff like that. And if I roll the ones, it's horrible.
If you get lucky, you can slingshot them. Like you can charge something in the mid board and then charge something and then you're in.
Exactly.
But you're still going to take you 3 turns.
Still get 3 turns. And by that time, my flayed ones have been gone.
Yeah.
My backline is gone. My little heavy destroyers are probably going to be really weakened. So just the indirect fire has such flexibility of being safe, but also dealing damage. And they have obviously just suffered a little bit of a nerf where they can only hit on 4s. Was it 4s?
Yeah, that's a big change. Big change.
But I mean, that's still 50-50.
It is, you're right. And
that doesn't account for rerolls.
No, and that's or fate dice that we just talked about, all those kind of things. There are ways. The challenge was there was ways to proc it so they could hit on 2s, and they could do things like Death Guard with Morty. Those Plague Burst crawlers could ignore all your modifiers as well, so you weren't getting cover or anything like that.
Exactly. So they're just popping away at me.
So they've brought it down so that indirect isn't too strong. It was OP, I think, was fair to say, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's very true. It's a bit OP, especially when you hit on indirect, who's in the back line, hitting on 2s. Like, come on, it's like that's too much.
Yeah.
And like the other one in Tunids, I think it was a Biovore, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
Where it just shoots off this little spore mine into a corner, one little model that just squeezes it randomly wherever you want to do actions. That can no longer be done now in the new edition because it's OC0, spot on. Yeah. But it was still a nightmare to deal with because I was like, I can't stop it, and I don't want to dedicate an entire couple of units or like a unit to take out the spore mine because it's not a case of I have no worry about taking out the spore mine in shooting. It's so much that it's one model, really small. You can sneak them in places. So I've got to move my entire unit to be able to see it and then shoot it. But then when I do that, my rest of my unit can't see anything else. So it's like, it's worth doing.
Another one of those hard choices, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one for me, the indirect fire. I don't have very many other units I don't deal with because Necrons I feel like got a lot more flexibility than other armies.
Yeah, Necrons have got quite a lot of flexibility now. But I think, speaking of which, one of the things that I find challenging is 3-inch deep strike.
Yeah.
So you've got Space Marine Inceptors have got that rule, so they can those guys can drop in and put some real firepower out.
Yeah.
And Necrons, obviously, they've got the Strat and Hypercrypt as well. So playing against Hypercrypt Necrons is I just sometimes have to accept it. Like you can zone out enough of your backfield to prevent 9-inch deep strikes, and that's reasonably comfortable.
Yeah.
But the trying to keep enough units back to zone out a 3-inch deep strike just leaves you short to do other things that you need to do in the game.
Or you're too spaced out in the backline where you're going to be able to get shot at.
So you difficult. I think you've just got to accept sometimes that there's. I mean, obviously you don't leave enough room so they can deep strike a bloody Doomsday Ark in there or something like that. But a unit of 20 warriors. But if you're zoning for 9, you can keep those things out anyway. Yes. But zoning for 3 is really tricky.
It's just too difficult. And I think it's always one of them things where my opponent tells me, "Hey, I have a 3-inch deep strike. I'm going to do it." I always forget, and then they always do it. I'm like, I forgot.
Well, this happened, but we played the same guy in the Northeast Open last year with the Grey Knights player Daniel, didn't we?
Yes,
and he reminded me 2 or 3 times, and then did it.
He was very polite, very nice. I think it was like at the start of the game. Turn 1, turn 2 reminded me, and turn 3 you'd done it, and I was like, you can't do that. I was like, how dare you?
He's just told him a home objective.
Yeah. But played really well. But that happens.
Yeah. So it's one. Yeah, that one I think is tricky, and similarly, like as mentioned before, the Incarn, obviously she can do that, but it's not even 3 inches. So
it's just automatic.
It's thinking about having something there that can counterpunch. So that you don't lose your objective, or that they can't do too much damage. You can deal with them in the next turn.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
I like it.
Good.
I've got another one for you. This one's a funny one for you. When you put this on the list, I was looking. I was like, "You hate this?"
I love to hate him. Yeah. So this will. This sounds like an oddball one because I'm obviously love Necrons, but it's the Nightbringer, and the reason is because whenever I take the Nightbringer, he's notorious for hitting like a wet lettuce. Like he rolls an awful lot of ones.
So you hit on 2s.
Yeah,
you pretty much wounded on
most
2s,
things on 2s,
and then your ones come out.
The number of times he's bounced is legendary.
Yeah.
but whenever I face him on the table, he's an absolute beast and like MVP.
Yeah, I think I've actually the only time I versed him was once I had my Nightbringer and he had his Nightbringer.
Yeah.
And obviously they have fly, but they can't go over buildings very well, so they've got to go around. And we were on the opposite side of the buildings and we kept on like moving it and like
It was like a Mexican standoff. Yeah.
A
Catan
standoff. It was whoever got the charge off first was probably going to be taking it out relatively good. So it was just like very much like, oh, who's going to go first? Who's going to make the effort? I think we got like turn 5. It was like, okay, we'll better just go in and attack them now and see what happens. Yeah, that's the only time I've ever really versed.
But yeah, he's if I could make him work, I would love to love him. But it's more that the contrast between how he is when he's in my army list and how he is when he's in my opponent's.
There's a meme in there somewhere.
Yeah,
I think that
probably.
will work. I love it. I
Good.
love it.
What about armies that we enjoy playing against? Because there are some factions that I just really love rolling dice against.
Yes, it's you know what, this depends for me because it depends on a few different factors. I like most armies.
Yeah.
There's not one particular army that I could sit there and be like, this is the one I hate. The most ones I really enjoy playing against is the ones where we decide a theme, where it's like, hey, bring a competitive list. And I'm like, I'm going to bring the sweatiest list I can find. And I love those sorts of games. But on the flip side, I love when they're like, oh, just bring like a casual game list or bring a fun list, because then I'm like, oh, what can I find in my list, in my Necron list that no one's done before? So that one time when I brought the tournament, the 1,400 points.
Oh yeah, the 300 points Wildlings tournament. Yeah,
it was just a very casual tournament.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh well, what can I do? And I'm not bothered about winning. I'm not bothered about losing. I'm just there to have fun. So I was like, what can I squeeze in a list that no one's seen? So I started looking at all the meta lists, and I was like, okay, what unit isn't mentioned in this list? Now I was scrolling down all the lists and Monolith wasn't mentioned.
No one was taking Monolith, no.
And I was like, can I squeeze 3 Monoliths into this list and make it like a legit army? Because obviously Battle Line, you didn't need to bring any more Battle Line units.
Yeah.
And I did. I brought 3 Monoliths and everyone hated me.
I think it was just because of the bubble meta at that tournament, because because people just simply hadn't built a lot of anti-tank into their lists. You and Knights were a stat check for everybody else.
Yeah, it's true.
But Knights were a stat check for you.
Oh yeah. That was definitely my Achilles heel. Game 1, game 2. Although very fun games, the opponent didn't have very many anti-tank.
But it's very funny that you're like the pariah of that. Like everyone's like, oh, remember, those 3 Monoliths. What a nightmare.
I feel bad.
But the Knights player that won the tournament, who beat you and won the tournament, doesn't get any of that stick.
Yeah, that's true.
But they were exactly the same issue for most armies.
Yeah, like I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong.
Did nothing,
I want to say that. All right, I'm innocent in this.
Jagnus did nothing wrong.
Exactly. But yes, for anyone who doesn't know, I won the first 2 games. I wouldn't say they were easy games, but they were very fun games. And my Monoliths just kind of moved up as part of the terrain. They just moved up. Game 3 came along when versus the Knight player. He just walked through me.
Yeah.
The first turn, I lost 2 Monoliths.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. I was like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Still a close game because of the mission that we were playing. But and I had my flayed ones. They always come in clutch for me.
Yeah.
But my Monoliths just moved up. Didn't take out any Knights, got destroyed, turn 3 came about, and I was just playing for objectives.
Yeah.
And I was doing well, but I wasn't going to win against that.
No.
But yeah, I think just making lists that are really fun. I mean, another list on top of that, when we're playing against a fun army, was I just brought all Battle Line, like 80 warriors.
Yeah.
My back was gone by the end of it. But it was like, when I was versus my friend, I was like, look, I'm going to bring this list. It's going to be stupid.
Yeah.
You bring a stupid list so you don't outpower me. And I
still really want to put a load of warriors on the table for this edition.
So fun.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, obviously with the new Battle Line changes coming, I haven't got my cards yet because they're out of stock. Thanks.
No.
Thanks, GW.
I found some, as an aside, like we were talking about this in the last podcast, your cards, you ordered them, but they're out of stock because GW didn't make enough. And I was like, I think I've ordered them. And I was expecting them to arrive last Monday. And what came through the door was a big parcel. I'm like, this looks too big.
Yeah.
And I opened it. And
too flat for this one, for what I wanted.
It was the new objective markers. I'd clicked on the wrong box. So I found somebody that I still had one set in stock, Touchwood. So I've paid for them, so we'll see if it arrives.
We'll see if it arrives.
But yeah, I think the changes to Battle Line, this is the time to try and run a ridiculous amount of warriors again.
And I think that's it. I think just going back to it, I think like, look, if you're going to play a game, if you want to enjoy a game, ask your opponent, be like, what kind of list do you want to bring? Do you want to bring a competitive list? Do you want to try and just sweat it out? Or do you want to just bring something really funny? And I probably, I recommend both. I think
absolutely.
Going competitive to learn and get better is a fantastic way.
Yes.
Be honest, because there's no point of being secret about your list. Obviously, you can kind of be secret. Like, don't tell me what units you're bringing, but Dan, if you're going to want to play a game, tell me what if you're going to go competitive. Because if you go competitive and I'm like trying new stuff out, well, I want to get demolished. There's no fun in that.
Yes.
Whereas if you both go and be like, I'm going to go in to win. I'm going to kick your shit out of you. Dan. Let's try and kick the shit out of me.
Yeah, and there's
really
that
good.
we, and maybe we enjoy that. Some people don't, and I also think it depends on where you are in the hobby in terms of how long you've been in it, and also whether it's a newer faction to you.
Exactly, and it also depends on obviously you have the flexibility of I've collected Necrons for so long now. I have the flexibility of choosing my lists.
Yes.
A lot of people don't have that.
Yeah.
So maybe when you go in there, be like, maybe set the not ground rules, but maybe like advise your opponent, hey, I'm looking for a good game. I want to learn the game, so bring what you want. But I am restricted by what I have available. Maybe just setting those kind of ground rules to have a good game.
I fully agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you are playing somebody who is still learning the game or learning the faction, even if they've requested a competitive game, try and make it interactive.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't just alpha strike them.
Like turn 2, like, oh, you wipe turn 2. Get good.
This is why there's certain armies that I didn't like facing, and one of the ones that you mentioned in terms of Death Guard is those factions tend to be the ones where I don't feel I'm having any impact in the game. I'm just picking a lot of models off the table, and that is not a lot of fun for me. It isn't. I think any game where I'm still, even if I'm losing, if I'm still doing something and having, that's. And I think this edition is the best one for that. There's more interactivity in this edition than there probably ever has been. Yeah. But those are the games that are all the factions that I don't like the most. Yeah.
Do you want to give a bit of context to the little joke that we keep saying?
Yeah. So it was playing against Death Guard, and it was exactly what you talked about. So this is before the nerf to Indirect. So Death Guard with Morty, and the Plague Burst Crawlers, which are their Indirect, and he gives them an aura that ignore all modifiers. Yeah. So they were hitting me on something ridiculous, and basically Dark Eldar are very squishy, toughness 3. Yeah. So I think his wound is on 2s with those Plague Burst mortars. Yeah. So he was just able to pick up all. So you start the game, and turn 1 they've got the range to hit anything on the table. So turn 1 he gets turn 1. Yeah. I can't see him, so even if I'd got turn 1, I couldn't have done anything. Yeah. And turn 1, he just points at things, and I'd have to take them off the table.
And then you're so weak.
Yeah. So like, what are we going to do about this? Yeah. And then so I'm like, right, well, I'll stage up a bit, and then turn 3 I'll be able to hit them. So I'll move up behind some terrain, and turn 2 he just points at them and takes them off the table with his Indirect. And I'm just like, I'm not having a lot of fun here, Lewis. This is not, because I couldn't. There was nothing I could do to impact the game. And those games are the ones where I don't have a lot of fun. I keep saying it, but yeah. And I think 40k still has some. There are still some ways to do that. Yeah. So I've been steamrolled by a couple of fast melee armies like Space Wolves or whatever, where they just roll up the table. I couldn't stop them. Call it like Wolf Jail or whatever. Kroot can do it to you as well in Tower apparently, but I haven't played against that yet. But yeah, you are not able to if you move out to try and move. You can't move block them because a lot of them are infantry. Yeah. So they can just come, like your Wolfen can just come through the walls. Cavalry are so fast that it doesn't really stop them, and it's against some factions will always do that to some other factions. That's just the way it is. It happens. And it shouldn't. I think it should be a more balanced game, but it still happens a lot less than it used to in 9th.
Well, but I think because it's easier in this edition because you're not restricted by you have to bring X amount of battle line, X amount of this.
Yeah, and I suppose it does
give
have
the flexibility of people to build these sorts of lists.
Space Wolves, they're kind of they've addressed that, and they're going to be less powerful. They'll still be good, and they will always be good into Drukhari and Eldar. I think they're good counter to them. Yeah. But there should be armies that are hard counter to you, but you should still feel like you've got a fighting chance. Yeah,
that's true. It's true.
Yeah. Good.
Well, so that's the like I say, that's kind of not so much the army I enjoy playing against, but it's just the one that I think setting the expectation for to have a good game.
But and I think leading on from that it can often be more the opponent than the faction, can't it? Mm-hmm. I have a couple of Eldar players at the Wildlings Club. There's Paul and Lee who play, and I absolutely love playing both of those, even though I don't like playing against I don't like playing against Eldar normally. I still really enjoy my games against them because they're just really nice guys, and you just
have fun.
Yeah, and they're not. They're easy people to get on with. So even though you get beat, you still learn something. You feel like you've had a nice time.
They give you a little lollipop at the end. Yeah. Like, oh, well done, mate. You played the best you can. Turn 2.
Little pinch in the cheek.
Yeah.
No. Wow. So in those respects, I think that's that a good opponent can make it a fun game.
Good.
And like I said, even like the game I played on Friday against Dark Angels, well, that was a new puzzle for me to solve because I haven't had to face that Vanguard unit detachment before.
Yeah.
Rob was a really nice guy, so it was a great game. We just ran out of time. I would love to have played it together.
That's maybe something that we could also address, like the timing of these editions. I feel like games are getting longer and longer recently. This is the way I'm playing. But
I fully agree. Like, but the start of the edition, it felt like this is a bit more streamlamed. And then
because it was the index, wasn't it? It was like cool. There wasn't like so much to remember.
Yeah, that's
it was like quite good. Now the flavors there, it's becoming longer. And maybe a topic for another discussion.
Yeah, very good point. That's it. Well, part of that one. Yeah,
definitely.
I also like playing against Gene Stealer cults because it comes back to that problem-solving elements. Like they're so tricksy.
There's so much to think about, isn't there? With Gene Stealers, you've got to like 4D chess whenever you play. Now, I don't play them, but when I see people play them, I just see the cogs whirring. They're just like they're zoned out. They're in the moving phase, and they're like talking to themselves.
I had a game this week against Jared with him, and because the new codex has dropped, and he just wanted to try it out, and it was really interesting. The codex is not. It's not awful, I don't think. It was pretty good. Sick. There's some units in there, these aberrants who still hit like a truck, and they've got to feel no pain. They're quite hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
So there was they're always really interesting to play against, and I think similarly with Orks, as you mentioned, you don't like playing against them. I really love a good dust up in the middle of the table,
right?
So
big old scrap,
and one that you're in with a chance with, like I said. So
a lot of times I'm not in there for a good chance.
So Orks are I do now that they've nerfed Bully Boys. I'm looking forward to trying that again. But a good dust up in the middle of the table again, and Gene Stealers are quite melee focused. So there was a lot of back and forth, and it's those games where. The chess analogy is really good because you're swapping pieces a lot. We call it trading out, don't we, in competitive 40k. But there's an awful lot of trading out, and that's just another level to the game that you have to think about. In terms of so I know if I take this unit, he's going to then take me, and then I have to take that unit, and so on and so on. And I love that aspect of it. And they're also Gene Stealers are also more of an MSU type of list, I suppose. So for Necrons, they can be a challenge unless we're MSU. Because they've got a lot more maneuverability around you. But going into my Dark Eldar, it's quite a good matchup.
Good.
And, so really enjoy those.
Nice. Very nice.
What about the in terms of the armies that you've got? Do you love all the armies that you've got, and are you happy with those?
That's a good question because I've got called me out here, Dan.
Well, I will come on to that. I can't really point fingers anymore, can I?
No, that's actually true. So I guess I got 4 armies: Necrons, Knights, Tyranids, and Imperial Guard.
Yes.
I love my Tyranids. I love all of them. I do generally love all of them that I've got. The Necrons are always my favourite because they were the ones I've had from the very start. They are taking a bit more of a backseat there now because I'm getting my Knights painted up. And I'm fairly happy with how my Knights have came out.
Yeah, they look lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to playing them more just to show them off and just learn something else. Because I think I've played with Necrons so much. I know their rules. I know what they can do. I really struggle with what opponents can do. I really started wanting to get more armies under my belt just so I understand how they play and they work. When I verse them, I've got a better chance of understanding what's to come and how to fight against them.
It is a totally different game if you're playing against an opponent who with a faction that you know inside out, isn't it? Sometimes though it's great to play against, like you say, sometimes you come up against another Necron player and they've got a list and a play style that I've never even thought of. I'm like, that's really interesting.
That's it.
But generally speaking, like if you're playing against Necron, like, all right, in a Hypercrypt Legion, I know what you can do, and therefore I know what I have to do to counter that.
Exactly.
And it becomes again a much more of a tactical battle, doesn't it?
Certainly does. Yeah, I picked Knights because I like the idea of having such little units. You need to prioritize what you do thoroughly. Like with my Necrons, it's like, all right, I've messed up here. Right, well, I've got more units that can do this action X, Y, Z. Whereas with knights, each knight has to do something specific. It has to be in the right place. So really look at that.
There's not a lot of wiggle room for misplaying a unit, is there? Mispositioning,
which I think will help me when I play my Necrons.
Yeah,
because I feel like I misplay a lot of my Necrons because
you can't.
Exactly, I'm too laxed. I'm like, that's fine. This is where you can.
I'm very similar with that in MSU. In my MSU Drukhari,
exactly. So if I play knights, I'll get a bit more focused in and be like, right, no, I can't. I need to do this. And I've also got Necrons, not Necrons, sorry, I've of course got Necrons, Tyranids for the opposite. I want to have lots of units and get my head prioritized to be like, right,
learn the kind of horde mentality,
so that when I'm versing the horde, I know what they're thinking, so I can fight against it. So that's kind of why I've picked my armies. Not so much because I do love them all anyways, but I just think they will help me become a better player.
Imperial Guard I feel a bit sad for, because Indirect was basically all I had going for them, and
which is kind of why I'm
and that's gone now.
I like the idea of just having like 3 basilisks in the back, and just like bah, 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 just to kind of rain, because that to me sounds cool. Rain down and then have a bunch of horses just run up.
It's almost like World War One-esque, isn't it? The aerial artillery bombardment, and then the cavalry charge.
Just the shock and awe of it. I think it'll be really good. But now basilisks have been a bit more reduced. I'm like,
God, it doesn't look at the moment like they're in a good place. It's early days yet, but it really doesn't. On paper, it doesn't look good for them. Bless them.
I bought a bunch of tanks that were cheap, which is great, but like 6 Lehman Russes and a Baneblade.
6 Lehman Russes.
Nice. I know. But then I'm like, like that's too similar to my list for Imperial Knights.
Right, because you're just playing small numbers of units that are big and tanky.
Exactly. Pun intended there. But yes. So they're my lists. They're my armies. What about you, Dan? What were your ones? You happy with them all?
So I've obviously got Necrons. My son has got Space Marines, but he's not really. He's only 15. He's in that phase where he's not that bothered about Warhammer at the moment. So I could play with his Space Marines, but I haven't really bothered with them. I just don't. I don't mind playing against them, but they just don't appeal to us for some reason. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. Yeah, like I see them. I'm just like, well, they're not generic, but I do look at them like, I've seen you too much. Like I kind of want to play you.
I mean, maybe it's in the future. Who knows? The minis are there, but Drukhari, I'm still really enjoying Drukhari. I'm still learning a lot about Drukhari. I had a game against a Drukhari player, brought quite a fun list. Drukhari Richard, who is very often the guest on the on Sam's channel, Daily Dice. Nice. Go and check that out on YouTube. Yeah, very lovely lad. He didn't absolutely rinse us. It was a reasonable game, but he pulled away at the end there. Yeah, but I learned a lot from playing against him, because I'm still in the Necron mentality of my units must survive, whereas Drukhari is much more about, I just need to make sure I spend them wisely, so when they die, they've achieved what they want to achieve. Yeah, and he plays in a much more free flowing and aggressive style, which I think suits Drukhari. Yeah, and I'm a little bit more like, I don't want to do this in case I get shot. So it was good to these guys. I don't want them to go. So that informed the game I had against Gene Stealer Cults. So I was like, I'm going to be a bit more aggressive here and just see how it goes. And I actually enjoyed it more as well. Yeah, you just have to learn. It's a step up to learn to make sure that unit achieves its goals before it dies.
And I think it's good to learn these armies, as I said before. It's good to learn the army before you move on. Yeah, and like it's almost like we're trying to like justify how many armies we have. I
mean, I feel comfortable with Necrons, particularly Canoptic Court. I think that is the most user friendly. I think if you're a better player, Hypercrypt offers you a bit more of a higher skill ceiling, I reckon. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, moving them around, using the strategy at the right time.
But Drukhari are still improving with them, and I'm still enjoying playing with them. They're a very enjoyable army.
I think enjoyment over anything else is the big thing. I think all my armies I've got, I enjoy them for different reasons. Yes, I thought they're all different lists, which is the big thing.
So and this was my original goal, was the same as yours, was to try and cover, and I think across your 4 armies you cover pretty much the 4 key aspects of the game. Yeah, and that was what I was looking to do. So Drukhari, I think, are quite high ceiling as well. They require a bit of skill to play, which I haven't got yet, but I'm getting better.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good to jump in there though. There's no point of holding back from them, being like, I don't want to play that army because I'll not learn it. No, you'll learn as you play. You need to just get games under your belt.
And they were directly opposite to Necrons, because Necrons are, as we said, they're about resilience and damage output, and Drukhari are much more glass cannon. Yeah. So there's an opposite there. But then the third army is quite similar to Drukhari, so I picked up a bunch of secondhand Gene Stealer Cults from Daryl from the Betrayed by Dice podcast. So they're just gone straight in the garage at the moment, because I'm still painting the Drukhari. I've nearly finished my Necrons. So by the end of this year, I should have 2 fully painted armies and like
write that down, make a note, someone.
I'm talking about a significant number of points. Like I've probably got 4,000 or 5,000 points in Necrons, probably similar to you.
Yeah.
And I reckon I won't be far off that on Jakari. It's probably 3 to 4, maybe 4.5.
Nice.
So the sort of I don't know if you're the same as me, but when I start a new faction, I'm like, I need 3 of everything. Or at least 2 of everything. I like to have all of it, all the toys.
I try not to. I've been with my knight. I've been pretty.
No, you haven't.
No, I know.
What have you just done?
Oh, don't. I'm getting called out. Yeah, no. So when I first built my knight army, I was like, this is the list I want.
Yeah.
I bought the models I wanted. And then yesterday, obviously, I hadn't had my cards for the new mission deck, so I went on the website and I was going to message him and be like, oh hey, I was like, would you mind just sending me the magnets that I want for my knights a bit sooner? But
because they're in the same order as your cards, aren't they? Yeah.
Exactly. So they're not being shipped yet. So as I was sending the message, I was like, oh well, if I get like a Vindicar assassin to go in with my Imperial agents. Imperial Knights army as an allied, I can then pick up the Lancer because I want the Lancer and he's cheaper and I can fit in this guy. So I ordered that. I dropped a message and I sat there. I was like, oh yeah. The thing is, though, because of Sam. All right, Sam on Daily Dice, he minced me with the Lancer.
Yeah, he did.
So I want to mince everybody else.
Smash your katana and everything else, didn't it? Yeah.
It was very mad, very sad.
Yeah. But it's a lovely model of Lancer as well. It will look good, and I think. Obviously we're Warhammer players, so we're used to justifying our purchases with flimsy excuses.
Yeah, of course.
You've powered through your knights in terms of building and painting them. You're nearly finished.
I've only got one more to paint. The other one's I'm waiting on the magnets. It's fully painted, so you need to put the magnets together.
I've been really impressed with how quickly you've put them together.
And that I'll have a full army very soon. Oh, actually, didn't I say in the last podcast I'll have like more knights ready for the background? Don't look them up.
But you kind of deserve to reward yourself for that with more knights, I suppose.
Exactly. It's a treat for myself.
Yeah. And as a fourth kind of project, which is way at the back of the garage, I bought a box of Orks cheap as well, which are going to need some love. They'll need paint stripping and starting again. But I think I want. I'll probably end up with 5 armies because I want a small army like you've got, like a tank like Knights or something similar.
Just something easy.
I do love Orks, and I've always loved Orks. So they're not even a back burner project; they're behind the back burner. But
good. I like it. Fair.
So I mean, in terms of how many armies is too many, because of this, the amount of rules that you need to know for your army, I think it comes over the years. Like when you've played Necrons for a few editions, even though this is a new edition, you kind of know the play style.
Yeah,
that doesn't. And some of the rules don't change, like lethal hits for Gauss or whatever come across, don't they?
Yeah.
So you kind of build up on that knowledge bank.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my strategy is don't start too many armies at once. Build one, paint one, learn how to play it, and then
See, I'm just going to come on and say it. No army. There's not a number that you can throw on how many armies are too many.
Yeah.
Go out there, buy as many armies as you want. Just have fun.
Enjoy it. Absolutely.
Enjoy it. Play the armies. I think the key thing is play the armies you have fun with.
Yes,
don't chase the meta.
Yeah,
a lot of people would just chase the meta and then an army becomes bad and they don't play it anymore. No. Play the army that you enjoy.
Yeah,
and if
100%.
that means 6 armies, then get 6 armies. But yeah, I'll be everyone's weigh-in. What's it? I'll be everyone's dealer.
Yeah,
get in there. Get away. Buy more.
Yeah.
I'll whisper in your ear. Buy more. you need that.
But yeah, I'm happy with what I've got, and good. I'm happy to have another project to look forward to as well.
I think that's nice as well. Yeah, I like that. Having something to paint that's coming up. I've finished my nights. I'll probably play some games. I think I'll just relax, play some games. Then I'll jump on the bandwagon of probably my Tyranids, I think, next.
Yeah,
because they should be easy enough. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's all me. Good. Well, thank you again. I hope you've enjoyed that. As we said at the beginning, put in the comments what factions you love playing against and hate playing against.
Yeah.
Let us know why. And also, how many armies have you got? Let's have some. Be honest.
Let's see.
Let's see who's got the record out there.
If I see any comment saying 1.
No, we're not. I'm
going to delete your comment. You're wrong.
I wonder if there's anybody out there that's got double figures. Let's find out.
There's definitely going to be someone.
Yeah, there'll be
Name
somebody
and shame.
out there.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Thank you.